Hey, what's going on guys? My name is Rampage and welcome to Rampage Reviews Resident Evil Revelations 2, Episode 1, Penal Colony for PC. Resident Evil Revelations 2 is a single-player or split-screen survival horror experience developed and published by Capcom for PS3, PS4, PS Vita, Xbox 360, Xbox One, and PC. This review will focus on the campaign for Episode 1. The sequel is presented in an episodic style format, with one episode releasing each week starting with Episode 1 on February 25th, 2015, with the final episode on March 18, alongside the retail release of the game. Was this a good choice to make by Capcom, and will they keep up with the development platform they've stuck themselves in? Let's find out. The story is told with two perspectives, both Claire Redfield's and Barry Burton's. Claire's story starts off with a commercial about a company called TerraSave, which, after further research, is the company Claire worked for after the events of the first game. A little heads up there, Capcom, would have been nice for newcomers. The basis of the story consists of Claire and Moira getting taken by some military men. They appear to be SWAT, who decide to break up this welcoming party by entering the building with some quite extreme measures. Yet, no explanation as to why this is happening. This guy shoots the glass to enter, yet apparently none of the bullets hit anyone, when they clearly should have. I'm not sure if this was a oversight by the developer or just a weird angle, but it did seem a little odd to me. Moments later, you wake up in a jail cell that opens for you. So far, the lack of explaining anything is quite strong in this one. Barry's story starts with him magically arriving at Claire and Moira's location in his boat, whilst listening to a broadcast sent out by Moira. This part really bothered me because 1, how on earth did he know their location? And 2, since when were broadcast signals recorded? Okay Capcom. The only explanation for how Barry knew where to look would have been due to some tracking device, but the game refuses to feed us this information or even point out how he knew. Capcom, you have an okay story thus far. The two main characters being kidnapped by some mystery unit indicate how Barry knew. That would be good. But the time in between Claire and Barry's campaign is too large to even follow the narrative correctly. I'll give them one thing though, it does ask a lot of questions, but it's hard to tell if Capcom are intentionally cutting out some of the story for the factor of intrigue, or was this a complete oversight?
No. It's too dangerous for you to come along.
Barry's campaign isn't as thrilling to me as Claire's was, which could indicate that Capcom wanted the female protagonists to be deemed the main or dominant characters, which is perfectly fine with me as we need more female protagonists in video games. However, I would have liked Capcom to fill in the void between both Claire and Barry's campaigns. I mean, they are 6 months apart. What happened in between this time? We never find out.
This was logged 6 months ago.
It just annoys me that a large section of the narrative is being completely forgotten by the developer, as well as unexplained portions within the game, i.e. the links between Barry knowing their location. This seems like the story was either an afterthought, or just filled with gaps followed by a lack of conclusion. Without ruining any more of the story, that is all I'll provide you without completely ruining it for you. The visuals can be quickly determined by the initial in-game cutscene, a cutscene rendered in-engine, non-CGI, simply due to the low-resolution wall textures and character model depicted within it. Although when Claire gets up, and it pans back to third-person perspective, for the most part the textures are okay, but a lot of them in the game world are rendered quite poorly, which clearly points out, to me, that the game will have a lot of variance with the texture quality throughout the game, and this has been a trend with Resident Evil games as of late, which is quite strange. As Resident Evil 5 looked somewhat decent, it is like Capcom is trying to go backwards in overall quality. The texture resolution does vary between areas, but a notable texture that was on the low side was the pre-rendered blood splatters, and for some reason nobody ever gets them correct. Is it that hard? Now, for a $25 price tag, they aren't the worst I've ever seen, but I really did expect the textures to look somewhat decent from Capcom and not all over the place like Resident Evil HD Remaster, which was released back in January this year. However, if we're looking at this from a retail price value of around $60, then this would probably be considered a low-budget video game from a well-known AAA studio regardless of the DLC bundled into it. More on that shortly. This time around, Capcom decided to add quite the detailed list of PC settings. The most important options include a frame rate limiter with 30, 60 and variable, with several forms of anti-aliasing, so props to Capcom for that. They don't get to scrape under the rug that easily though, because there are some UI related issues, like the game's initial start loading screen, which states, "Please don't turn off your console," on the PC version. Also, the game's video settings say, "More options and details," next to each other. This should really be one or the other and centered rather than both. Another strange issue with the game is that I bought episode 1 directly from Steam, and when I load it there are 2 Japanese splash screens. What's even stranger is the start splash screen shows Biohazard Revelations 2, rather than the English name Resident Evil Revelations 2. Please fix it before the retail version comes out, as this is yet another oversight that wasn't tested internally. I have a thread on the Steam forum with people responding from over 15 nationalities other than Australia, so clearly I'm not the only one experiencing this issue. Performance-wise though, the game does suffer from significant issues trying to maintain a stable frame rate with variable frame rate set on and maxed out visuals. A fix that the developer lists up to patch 1.0.1 was, note, to avoid animation stutter, you may have to set frame rate to 60 or 30 in-game and enable VSync. That's all good and great that you offer a workaround, however, after following the developer's instructions, the animations still stutter even with VSync on and set frame rate to 60, so not sure why they can't just fix it rather than point out a possible workaround. The performance issues appear to be related to certain areas in the game that cause a dip in frame rate to about 45 frames per second, whilst maxing out all 4 of my cores on my CPU, an i5-2500K clocked at 4.5 GHz. This should not be happening in a game like Resident Evil. Sorry to say this, but it seems like it was tested under very lazy conditions and isn't fixed yet. There are also multiple sections where the game does experience quite a lot of bugs. For example, the insect creatures having incorrect movement paths and clipping through walls and objects. Trees displaying as 2D images rather than a 3D rendered tree, or actually remotely reflecting that it would be anything other than a 2D image. It feels like we are just bought testers. If and only if they plan to fix it before the retail version, who knows? The game is a third-person shooter, which seems to be the go-to viewpoint for Capcom and the Resident Evil franchise these days. I have no issues with that, as I prefer it over the old-school static cameras. This game seems to have been built around the idea of co-op play, yet Capcom chose to only include split-screen co-op. Regardless of platform, this doesn't seem like a totally logical choice, seeing as the majority of gamers prefer or use online play more frequently over couch gaming. Personally, I'd prefer to have local co-op, LAN, or online co-op over having split screen on any game, especially on PC, as that isn't always the go-to form of play for anyone I know or myself. As for the PC version of the game, Capcom originally removed split screen altogether, until recently they decided, oh, we should listen to the people because there is way too much backlash. They chose to implement a beta split screen patch, which mind you hasn't been updated as of making this video. To show you how bugged the co-op patch is, here's a clip of my playthrough where the game thought that both player 1 and 2 are the same controller, even though I was playing by myself. I get it, public beta and all, but wow, you guys didn't test this poor implementation of co-op before releasing it. There are a few new mechanics included in this game, which are the second player, Moira, will shine a light in the direction you are looking, while in the dark, which is kinda cool. However, it would be nice to have the light on the entire time, or at least the option to. If not playing split screen, then the AI actually decides when they want to help out, which is quite annoying because most of the time they do what they want, but they don't really do anything. Essentially, Capcom only put this feature in because otherwise the second character would be rendered useless if they gave the main character a flashlight also. Both Moira and Natalia can help you find objects placed throughout the world, by looking at them with either the torch for Moira or looking at them with Natalia and aiming on a flickering object. Although this review is focused on the campaign side of things, I would like to mention that this game has over $52 worth of DLC, mainly for raid mode, but still, that is a huge portion of the game being cut out for DLC. All of this DLC could have been part of the game, or an unlock system. But it seems that Capcom have this need to release every game they make with some sort of DLC attached to it, which, for me, is getting quite annoying. Other than that, the game is basically the same as the later set of Resident Evil games. However, if you play on survival difficulty, like I did, then you might realize that ammo is extremely scarce, and that the pistol is extremely weak. Even though the damage stats say 120 for pistol, while the assault rifle says 80, I'm killing enemies faster with an assault rifle using less rounds than I do with the pistol, which makes absolutely no sense, even with headshots. Knifing a mutated enemy takes anywhere from 8 to 10 knives to actually kill them, which is a little excessive even for survival difficulty. During Barry's campaign, all the enemies swapped from being infected humans to zombies. Why did this happen, Capcom? There is absolutely no explanation to this. They do not indicate any reason for having multiple enemies, ranging from infected, zombies, and some Silent Hill type things. At least question within your game as to why the enemies vary so much within each campaign, or answer that within the game. Otherwise, it just looks like it's all over the place. Because seeing as the game is designed with a narrative about the infected, you need to fill in why there are some extremely stronger enemies, and why zombies are even in here. They don't fit in for me. As a new Resident Evil player, I don't follow what's going on here. Not to mention it takes 7+ pistol rounds of headshots to kill one single zombie. Why are pistols so weak in this game? Please explain. I just felt the game had so many weird puzzles that didn't need to be so long, while randomly changing the enemies without tying them to the narrative. It just felt lazy. With buggy AI being quite prominent within this game, I can't help to exploit them, standing on the other side of the flamethrower to force the enemy into it. I mean, seriously, go round, stupid. Now that's just one issue, but there were countless times where the AI would just be walking into the wall for no apparent reason whatsoever. The enemies also do not react to either the knife or any weapon shots, to the point where it's like they are beyond superhuman. However, this is a problem with most Resident Evil games, so I'll keep mentioning it until it's actually addressed. Come on, Capcom, lift your game. This is unacceptable. The sound within the game is actually quite good. If I did have to complain about one thing, that would be that the music triggers slightly before an enemy is about to run to you, or come out of somewhere, and it also takes quite a while to ease up on the tension music even after killing all the enemies around you. Which doesn't really make any sense. That is my only gripe with the music. The remainder of all the sound effects are great. While playing the game, I enjoyed it at first, but I felt like the entire first episode was me just walking around in a circle and walking through the same areas twice to find more enemies the second time round. I just didn't enjoy the gameplay as much as I'd hoped to. However, there is hope for a promising storyline here, but portraying a story without filling in all the gaps doesn't really make any sense or help drive the narrative you've created, especially with an episodic format. Also, the gameplay just doesn't reflect any story elements whatsoever, so you could basically just watch the cutscenes and you would still understand the basics of what's going on, which is kind of worrying. The AI alone made the game feel nothing like a survival horror game, nor did they help to indulge my interest in the game world, or even remotely make me feel scared, except that first jump scare. That did scare me. Every time I saw the weird Silent Hill-like creatures, I just felt annoyed by how many there were and how little ammo I had to kill them with. Yes, I get it, I played on survival difficulty, but they still shouldn't have the protection of Superman just because I chose that difficulty level. Capcom also removing co-op from the PC release and re-adding it as an afterthought, beta no less, was also disrespectful to all who purchased the game based on the fact the original listing stated co-op. The game was built around co-op. I think people would enjoy it more with online co-op, but apparently it's just me. I expected more from the original creators of the survival horror genre, and the quality of the game, to me, just felt rushed. Which is why Resident Evil Revelations 2, Episode 1, gets a 5 out of 10 from me. For more reviews, don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. My name is Rampage. Peace out.